All right, so this is a flute that one of my students brought to me. It's their own personal flute. Sorry, I don't have the tripod or the document camera set up right yet. Anyway, there's a couple of issues with it that she's noted, or at least one that she's noted. She's having a hard time playing anything where, basically these three keys are involved. And so I sort of did an investigation, and I'll go through those steps with you in a minute. One of the things I do want to note is that this flute has been recently serviced, supposedly. But that head crown, you can't really see it. It's not focusing nicely because, there we go. So you can see it's actually raised. So that crown, there's something wrong with it. So we're going to try and fix that. The other problem that I've noticed with this is right here. So this key, that in focus, seals up just fine when I hold that note. But it's also linked via this mechanism here down to these bottom keys. So when I push down here, when I push down here, it also moves up here. Now, I don't know if you can see that or not, but that's just not quite sealing. So that is where her problem is. So there, I talked in the last video about a lot of the time, if it's just a minor issue, sometimes the leak is just really tiny and it's further up the instrument. So we're going to just adjust this key at the mechanism here. And that is going to allow that to seal up much better. And so she'll be able to play again. Now, just because I always want to look, this pad looks good. We've got a halfway decent seal on those. Everything's seating nicely, so I'm not too fussed about the foot. The foot seems fine. So we're going to tackle that key issue. Geez, this phone keeps running out of focus. That key issue, and we're going to focus on this head joint issue. So bear with me. We'll see what happens. So let's talk about the head joint. So we've got an issue right here where it's separated. I'm going to unscrew this. So if you've never done this before, there's a screw in there and it's attached to some plates that have a cork in between them. And this just screws down on top of them. So this should, in theory, screw down tight to the body, but it's not going. So we have a problem with our cork and screw here. So in order to fix this, or at least investigate it further, I need to remove that cork from inside. There's a couple ways you can do this. The easiest way is with a drumstick. If you have the time, you take a drumstick, you cut it off, cut it off, I don't know, partway, close to the taper. And sometimes they already have a hole drilled in them. Sometimes you need to drill a hole in them. But that hole then slots over that screw and gives you something to press against without risking bending the screw. You can also go in the opposite direction. You can run the drumstick up the bottom of the flute and push it out the top here. But remember that the flute tapers a bit. So that's going to be a little bit harder. So I'm just going to place it like this because I don't have a drilled out one yet. Give it a push. It broke free. So there it is. And that was seized up in there pretty darn tight. You don't want these corks seized up in there. You want these corks to move a little bit because otherwise you can't tune the flute accurately. You can tune by, increasing or decreasing the amount of the head joint that's in, but if you want to really truly fix it and set the whole instrument in tune, that tuning cork is important. I don't know if you can see down in there. It's hard to see without a light, but there's kind of a line in the metal where You can kind of see it in that camera angle down here where this has been sitting. So obviously it's not been on there. It's been in there and seized up for some time. So I'm going to do a couple things. First, I'm going to check, is this tight? And it is. Is the cork sticky? It's not. It's been waxed with paraffin wax, which is what you want. The paraffin wax makes this cork slide. You use beeswax, which is sticky, to keep the plates attached and the cork centered, but you use paraffin wax on the outside because it makes it slide. I'm going to check, does the crown screw on to this really well? That goes pretty ways down. So I'm thinking that we're probably not in terrible shape here. I think we'll be able to do it. The last thing I'm going to check is, does the cap fit all the way down on the head joint? And it does. So this was just seized up and wouldn't move. So we're going to put it back in properly. So I'm going to drop it in from the bottom, if you please, because of the taper. And I just let it drop until it reaches there. Now, a general rule when you're doing this is that you want to press it through, and you do need that drumstick again to push it through, but you want to push it through basically until that screw that we talked about is touching the top level here. So I put my thumb over it, I give it a press, and as soon as it touches my thumb, that's my baseline. I then screw the cap back on, assuming I can get it on straight. Don't want to cross thread things. Oh boy, that's locking up on me. That shouldn't be, because that's screwed on just fine. There we go. No, that's not it. That's screwed on just fine when we were at, there we go. All right, now it's screwed on. Okay, now, how do I know that it's in tune? Well, I need another tool. And thankfully, it's a tool we all have. We've all got these. It's the cleaning swab. So, you know, these ugly things. And I like the metal ones for this, even though they're generic. You'll notice on the end of the cleaning swab, there's a little notch. If you've ever wondered what that's for, it's for tuning the head cork. So you run the swab up and you look through the hole of the mouthpiece and you look for that notch, and you can kind of see it on there. It's hard to see with the light I have, but that notch should be dead center of the hole, and in this case it's a little to the south. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tighten that head cork, and as I turn that head, what should be happening is that the cork moves up. Now, it doesn't seem to be going on this one very much, but it is making a small impact. So we're gonna just get this set where we want it, and we'll go from there. Okay. So I'm going to realign this because there's something funky going on with this crown still. But my head cork is pretty close to in tune. I'm going to come back to this. I'm just going to have to fiddle with it a little bit. I think that screw and that cap are possibly a little bit cross-threaded. So when in doubt, turn it backwards, like to loosen it when you first put it on. And you should get a little click when it slots into where it should be for it to properly screw on. And you shouldn't have to fight it at all. And I didn't have to fight that one. It just screwed right on. So now I'm going to make sure that I'm properly in tune. Again, we're basically there. And then that cap should be nice and tight, and now it's moving properly. So it was just cross-threaded, so we got that fixed. Now that head joint is in tune. Now for this, we're going to adjust this key. So when I depress this key, this lifts. When I depress the key down here, the thing it touches lifts. I don't know if you can see or not, but there is just a minute gap between this piece and this piece. There's a bit of cork in there. I guess the cork's just wearing a little bit. Eventually we'll replace that cork completely, but all I'm going to do is I'm going to put my thumb on that. Actually, I'm going to use a little tool called a pad slick. Usually erase it too, but I won't. I'm going to use this tool. It's called a pad slick. It's got something stuck to it, but felt stuck to it. But a pad slick is just a flat piece of steel, and we use that for adjusting pads and keys. I'm going to put that on to give myself some leverage, and I'm going to hold it down, and I'm just going to give this key a little press, and I do mean a little press. And all I've done there is I've adjusted how much this is related to this. So now when I push keys down here and they move this, that seals up much better. So now the real key to this is a play test, which unfortunately I can't do because of COVID. So I'm going to have my student play test this for me tomorrow, but it should be all fixed up.